When you realize that you've won, or maybe when you realize that the vice president has conceded, what was the first thing you did by way of celebrating the victory?
I praised God. I praised God. I was home that morning when watching from TV. Of course, we jumped around. It was not a concession actually, because we knew we had won way before he gave the concession. So I think the jumping, the screaming, the praises all happened, by Sunday morning when the picture was clear that we had cruised to victory. So by the time he was delivering his concession, speech, he had already sunk. And even though it was very surreal, and periodically I asking, hey, did it really happen? Has it happened? But yes, it was all sorts of emotions. But the abiding emotion is that of gratitude to the Almighty, gratitude to the people of Ghana, but also a very sober moment of deep reflection about what this win truly means for Ghana, and most importantly, the lessons we must draw from what has happened to the NPP as a party. And so I was very happy when the president-elect, when he was giving his acceptance speech after the declaration, said that we can celebrate and we should celebrate, but we must make the celebration brief. Brief because what was ahead of us was really a huge and daunting task. It was also repeated and reiterated by the party's national chairman, Johnson Nketia. So at the highest level, we are not in any way delusional at all about the work and the task ahead. And we must draw the necessary lessons from what has befallen the NPP, so we would avoid the same pitfalls of complacency, of insensitivity, of arrogance, and of very deep corruption that has characterized the outgoing government.
You've raised a number of things I would like for us to interrogate as we go along this morning. But before we do that, Shamima, when you were with us, like you rightly mentioned a while ago, you said that the NDC as a party was targeting some 32 to 35% in the region. And then you said that you were convinced that the NDC was going to win this year's elections. Question is this. In as much as you were convinced that you were going to win this year's elections, did you ever envisage that you're going to win it with such huge margins?
And the truth is no. The truth is no. I mean, we've done our internal polls. We had also tracked a lot of the polls that, other independent institutions, had done. We were minded by the Afrobarometer report that, surveyed Ghanaians and presented us the sentiment of Ghanaians around the state of governance. All these things, the signs, and then the signs, and then the prophets. Let me add that the prophecies that were also coming from some quarters. So plus, this historical cycle of the 8-year cycle. It's a very significant element. So we knew, and I kept saying that it would be a shocker if NPP won, because I kept saying, what would be the justification that the government that has arguably performed so poorly in comparison to all previous governments would be justified for a renewed mandate? Had they performed sterlingly better than all previous governments, then we would say that yes, then if they win, no surprise. It would have been a shocker. Do you see it? So we knew we were cruising to victory. We're not complacent about it. We put in the work, as you would see, we did. But the margins, truly, we didn't expect it. Even though Musa Dankwa, and I was on platforms with him on Metro TV a couple of times, and the projections that he made, we thought it was very high. But So we're pleasantly surprised at the margins. Truly.
Okay.
In Asante region, we had 4 seats. We said, okay, we're targeting at least 4 more. We have done 10. Imagine, when we said we're targeting at least 30 to 35% of the votes in Asante region, many people said, oh, that was overly ambitious. But we said, well, that is our target because we are putting in the work and we are relying on the sensibility, and good graces of the people of Ashanti region to reflect on what we did as a party when we were in government for the region in comparison to what Nana Akufo-Addo and Bawumia have done in the region. And ultimately, I think for Ashanti region, that was a compelling message, and we are truly thankful for this tremendous show of support.
And indeed, although you targeted 32 to 35, you did above 33% here in the Ashanti region. My next question is, what does this, massive victory, if I may put it that way, mean to you and the NDC? Especially when you mentioned that politicians should learn lessons from what has happened. What does it mean to you? What lessons are you learning?
It means to us, my number one lesson is what goes around comes around. And if we are unable to meet the expectations of Ghanaians, the fate that has befallen NPP is a fate that can equally befall us. So number one, we must learn the lessons. And one of the lessons is to be truly humble, even with this victory. Especially with this victory, is humility that must be our watchword as we try to reset this country. Number two, proper governance and resetting our governance. When we kept saying, and David, I said it when I was with you, I kept saying that, look, this Afrobarometer report that is constantly telling us that the Nana Bawumia government had become high-handed and were stifling media freedoms and eroding trust and accountability institutions by their flagrant respect for all good governance practices, their total disregard for all good sense, and their disregard for every criticism that was coming, even from respectable, neutral quarters who had supported the NPP in the past. Their behavior against those people was deplorable. And the fact that Nana Akufo-Addo would take no feedback and would only act stubbornly with regards to what he wanted to do all the time. One of the watershed moment that defined the intransigence of the Nana Bawumia government was the episode of the 88 NPP MPs who petitioned him to remove former finance minister Oforiatta. 88 NPP MPs. Never before had it ever happened in the history of our Fourth Republic, even beyond. And what befell some of those ministers, the machinations that went against them to deprive them of their primaries. The Subing MP, one of the most vociferous MPs, lost his primaries as a result of his position, his criticism of the Akufo-Addo government, that if you do not remove Ken Oforiatta, we will not recover from what was about to befall us. That was the character. And so we must learn the same lessons. His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. And I'm excited because even his demeanor after his win, if you saw him, he was not gloating in that victory because he truly understands what is at stake. And I pray that he would be guided and he would be centered and he would, he would seek the face of God in everything that he does. And he will carry the good people of Ghana along. Because all of us know exactly what has happened. And I know that even though we have high expectations, we know that we must crawl before we run. because to reset means we must pull ourselves from the pit that we currently find ourselves. And pulling ourselves is not a one-day thing. So even though the experience of John Mahama gives him an advantage in terms of how he intends to hit the ground running very fast, we know that it will take time to pull us out of this deep hole that the Nana Bawumia government has plunged all of us into. And we as individuals in this government, whoever will be appointed in the government, the instruction is already clear that he's going to exact the highest levels of accountability from members of his government and the highest level of ethical standards and the strict implementation of the public conduct policy, public officers conduct policy that will guide his administration. And I said that may God help him to implement fully.
Because again, Shamima, indulge me here. I read a story online on my Joy Online this morning where the president-elect is saying that any of his appointees, if you're not ready to work hard,